Okay, so there's a number of topics that I need to cover in order to sort of get you guys to understand what the differences are between spatial thinking and everything else, and I suppose how it's derived, why is it spatial thinking, um, you know, what is design process. So spatial thinking is an architecture and design process school. It's also a design innovation school. And what does that even mean? Um, when you ask anybody or when you talk about design process, even if you ask professionals or educators, they're probably going to struggle with trying to describe what a design process actually is. Okay? Now, according to maybe design thinking, which is another popular model, or any other sort of creative process, sort of not framework, because there isn't really exactly a framework, but the kind of general thing that people talk about in terms of design process would be obviously to sort of brainstorm, ideate, which is to come up with ideas, and then iterate, which is this idea of you go through revolutions or evolutions of ideas and tests and experiments. Iteration is quite a popular sort of term. It is a bit like science. You come up with an idea, you do something, you reflect upon it, you do it again, you do it over and over and over until you get to some kind of conclusion, often including a lot of failures and successes, and you're learning along the way. Sounds about right, right? And then prototyping. Um, Now, if you don't know already, architecture is actually more or less, we're always creating a prototype of some sort. Because if you think about design, you design one product, whether it's a hairdryer or a website or whatever, and you can go through lots of iterations to improve that product, and you can scale that product up, right? And so that becomes a final product. The final product in architecture ends up always being some version of a prototype, because many buildings are unique in their own way, and often, especially if you're doing some kind of new feature, it is new, and every site is different. So anyway, that's just something that you might not know about. So coming back to design process, what is design process according to the spatial thinking way, according to my way, or versus how you would what you would get from a professional, probably an architect. If you ask an architect what a design process is, they're probably going to mix it up with the business process, which is we do concept design or concept sketches. We obviously do site analysis, and then we head into detailed design. Then we go into some kind of final design. We do some kind of tendering process. We start working into the construction phase of things, and then towards the final practical completion. The design phase being very much the beginning of the total building process, and then the construction phase later on. So that design phase would be kind of what they talk about as a design process. But if we get into it, if that was the case, we go into conceptual design, detailed design, some kind of final design. That doesn't really tell me much about how to innovate or how to attain some kind of kick-ass result or guaranteed results, right? So, what is a design process in the form that we can innovate upon it, get better at it, train ourselves towards it, become a strong designer, in my mind? Now, think about it. How many of you have ever even heard about a design process that's going to help you kick ass or become a strong designer? What does a strong designer even mean, right? And I can tell you there are definitely traits or attributes to strong designers versus average designers. And you don't even have to I don't even have to talk to them. You can just look at the plan or look at the drawing or look at kind of how they talk, and you can already tell. Okay? And if we can come to some kind of agreement to that, then clearly there is a design process that strong designers employ, and a design process that non-strong designers employ, which is basically a lack of design process, right? And then think about university or think about even high school, have they even ever talked about this kind of process? Now, you might also think that strong designers is very much a practical, somewhat of a practical. I mean, obviously, there is a way they think, there is a way they design, but it could also be very much their opinions about trends or what they like, their preferences towards things, like they like a certain technique or a certain color or a certain design sort of style, right? You can imagine when you talk to a designer or a very professional designer or a strong designer, they're going to be quite opinionated, and I can say that I'm quite opinionated too. But the process that I employ is a little bit more logical, and it is very much a design process, not a business design process. Okay, and so that is the spatial thinking way. That is what the difference is. That if you do want to learn from the spatial thinking framework, which defines how exactly you are going to become a stronger designer, then that is that main difference. Because look outside of this, look anywhere else, and I challenge you to find me a framework that either guarantees results or actually kind of makes sense in almost like a scientific way. And design and creativity can almost practically be scientific. That is sort of sometimes how I see it, right? Um, Design process is is actually only one part of the framework. So the spatial thinking framework is made up of the design process, a personal process, an everyday process, and an ideas process. So design process is only one part of it. And in that definition, design process is primarily for design projects. But design process as a terminology is actually all of design, you know, the process of designing. Now, let me ask you, let's sort of go backwards again. Like, a designer, to get good at becoming a designer, is it just to design projects? Are they somehow great designers on a design project, and then somehow when they're not designing a project, somehow they switch off? Can you switch off creativity? Can you switch off design? The answer generally is no, you can't. And so to reverse engineer this, the design process or designing applies to every single facet of your life. It's not just on a project, right? And so you can already instantly tell what kind of designer a person is if they specifically talk about design project elements or project attributes when they talk about design, right? Because it's not just a project, it's how you see life, how you design your life, what you do in your life that pushes boundaries, or at least looks at the process of life processes or whatever. Because design is, creativity is one of the most core attributes that defines humanity or defines being a human. If it wasn't for creativity, aka, well, then resulting in both design and innovation. If it wasn't for innovation, we would very much still be very animalistic. We would still be in the animal level. Humans are defined by creativity, and yet we don't have a very structured process to teach creativity. To become a strong designer, you become strong at designing life. And so, just to help you define and help you understand what we refer to as design process in spatial thinking, is both kicking ass on a design project as well as getting better at sort of designing life or looking at the processes of life. Okay, so I hope that helps you understand it in terms of what design process really means. But just to go to one step further, because I'm very much aware of how difficult it is to sort of both market this idea or just to convince you guys what this means. In the specific topic of how this is going to help you in architecture design, or how this is going to help you in architecture studio. And I guess this is specific to architecture studio, but also this topic can probably help you understand a bit better. Now, the thing that I keep telling students is Do you think that you're going to get results, better results, if you hate your design? The answer is probably no, right? Do you think you're going to work faster if you love your design? The answer could be mixed. Sometimes you get obsessed with your design, and so you take longer. That's definitely not the spatial thinking way, okay? But the chances are, if you're going to love something or if you're going to like something, you're going to work on it more. You're going to want to work on it, okay? If you have to do something, you're dragging your feet, you're spending less time. Oh, sorry, you're spending more time. If you're confused about something, would you be working faster or slower? Come on, the answer is slower. And the more clearer you are at understanding where things go and what to do, the faster you get at it. Now, this can apply to design process, or this can apply to a design project, or it can apply to life. The more you're aware of the processes that are involved and the results that you can get, the faster you get. And so effectivity, efficiency comes along with a better design process. You could call it better design thinking. You can call it a better way to sort of conceptualize, because all this stuff sounds really airy fairy. If I just said design process and you're like, what the heck is design process? Why should I care about it? If I said concept, it sounds very conceptual, somehow philosophical. But to be honest, every single thing that you do has a concept. From where you travel, from the phone that you just bought, from the groceries you just bought, everything has some kind of a process. It's just that we don't talk about it. And it's not so much that you need to really explicitly reveal every single concept in your life, but just when we talk about concept, it actually is intrinsically linked to results, and faster results or better results, or um, um, just knowing where to go. And the reason why I get a little bit conceptual or a little bit more sort of thinking, and when I talk about conceptual, I'm really not talking about sort of airy fairy philosophical conceptual. That's not me, okay? But when I talk about conceptual and primarily looking at the mental thinking process as well as a personal process, the reason why I focus on it so much is because thinking can be so quick. Personal feelings and processes sure take a little while, but once you get it, it can be so quick. Whereas drawing can often be vague and slow. And so if you're going to work on a design project, I could think a million miles a second, right? Compared to drawing, which would take me hundreds of drawings, and in the end, I'm not even sure what I'm drawing, okay, if I'm not really clearly thinking about stuff or having a strong personal process. So just to sum it up, and I'm going to end this video, that design process really is not this really airy fairy, endlessly vague designing towards unknown outcomes. It is actually, in the spatial thinking way, a really honed in, effective, ever more effective process that you can train yourself towards seeing. So imagine specifically again for the architecture studio process, you could get quicker at getting stronger results that are much more professionally oriented results that can go into your portfolio, basically, and not be at the whim of open-ended design process or creative process or exercises that don't make sense. Okay,